Hello everyone, this is Wags from Eagle Dynamics, and welcome to this first live stream showing the DCS Normandy 1944 map, as well as the DCS World War II assets pack. So last week we released the trailer for the Normandy map, and we thought we'd do the live stream this week so we can give you a better kind of hands-on look of how the map and the assets pack look for kind of everyday use. So for the live stream today, I'll jump into my trusty Spitfire and fly around the Normandy map, and then we'll look at some of the individual units in the assets pack. So I'll jump into the mission editor so I can load in a mission. So also during the stream, I have about 30 or so questions that were posted on the forum that I'll try to answer. Okay, let's load in a demo mission I created. So now here's a look at the entire map, which measures probably around 93,000 square kilometers. And of course, it focuses on the Normandy area, and generally late summer 1944, where we have a lot of the newly established airfield by the Allies after the D-Day landings. And we can switch over to the map view. And this can be particularly helpful when you're placing units based on historical maps. And of course, then we have the satellite view, which is mostly helpful when you're placing units on the map and make sure they're not conflicting with buildings or trees or anything else as part of the map structure. So for this mission, I'm going to start here off the coast. And then I'm going to go ahead and fly south to Caen, and then head off to the west, then back up north to the coast again, and then I'll follow the coastline out to the west up to Point du Hoc. And as you can see, we have 30 airfields, both in France and in England. All right then, so let's go ahead and fly this mission. Loading, loading, loading. Okay, here we are. So I'm going to go ahead and reset my view, and I'll hit fly, and I'm going to pause for a second and take a look around. And I'm going to go ahead and adjust my view back a little bit and then up a little bit. Cool. Okay, off we go. Now, one of the first things you may notice is that we've updated the water a bit and better reflections. We actually have white caps based on the wind speed, and the surface of the water now is much more dynamic based on the wind conditions. So the higher the wind speed, the more chop and waves and swells you're going to have. So the mission I'm flying is in the summer in June 1944. But we'll also have the options for different seasons, particularly spring, summer, and autumn. We'll have definitely very different looks, but the winter not so much. It'll be more a adaptation of the autumn season. So for the next 10 or 15 minutes or so, I'll fly around the map, and I printed out many of the questions you guys posted to the forum. And I'll try to answer as many of these I can that I have good answers for. So one of the biggest questions we have is whether or not the modern aircraft of DCS World can operate within this map. And for the most part, yes, unless it's a very large aircraft like a B-52 or a B-1, which will probably have a lot of difficulty taking off from the runways. Most everything else should work pretty fine. Now, given that this map is focused on our World War II set of products, we have really no plans to add TACAN and VORs and things like that at this point. And at least when the map originally ships, we don't plan on having the radio navigations for World War II, but hopefully something that we can add on at a later time. Now, on a related matter, there's a lot of questions of whether or not the map could be adapted to modern day. And, except for the trains, which will be set based on the time period, everything else is going to be, strictly to 1944 period. And the trains themselves, just like the trains we have in the Caucasus map right now, it's an auto-generated vehicle unit, which it's really no function in the mission editor. It's automatically placed and runs by a schedule. Now, in regards to performance, probably the biggest thing the team is working on right now is actually optimization of the game. And as you can see, actually particularly right now as we're flying over Caen, there's a very, very high density of objects compared to virtually almost all of our other maps, whether it's the buildings, the trees, telegraph lines, what have you. So there's a lot of ongoing work right now in terms of performance optimization, and our goal is to have the optimization such that there's really no performance difference than the other maps. Now, in terms of English cities and ports and such, as some of you may be aware, when we originally advertised the Normandy map as part of the Kickstarter campaign, it was strictly just actually a much smaller area of northern France. And it wasn't until only later that we actually added a portion of southern England with several airfields to provide better gameplay. And so it's already had quite a bit of feature creep on this. And at this point, probably for the foreseeable future, it's kind of out of scope to start adding all the cities and ports and radar stations in southern England. It's not to say it will never happen, but at least right now it's not in the current plans. So another big question we have, of course, is the functionality of the trees and whether or not they're going to be collidable or not. And certainly, we believe that moving forward with any new DCS map, having a collision model for the trees is quite important, not just for the aircraft, but even more so for the helicopters and combined arms and things like that. And just as I said earlier about modern day units operating Normandy, personally I find probably the most fun for the Normandy map right now is flying the helicopters in it. Now, in terms of the release schedule, we're still looking at late April, and the map itself is actually pretty near done. The big items that still need to be done are quite a few of the asset units. And what will happen is when we do release it, it'll be part of version 2. We'll actually probably call it 2.1. And then once 2.1 is out with the Normandy map, then we'll refocus a lot of our map resources on updating the Caucasus map. And once we have the Caucasus map updated, we improve the explosions. Then we can go ahead and move forward on doing the unified version, which we're right now kind of tentatively calling 2.5, and that will essentially be the Great Merge, in which we unify the different DCS installations into a single one, and something that you and us are all very much looking forward to. So the next question is the map 1-to-1 scale? And yes, it is. You can clearly see this when you place kind of known object sizes in the world next to buildings and trees and things of that sort. So yeah, it is definitely 1-to-1 scale. Now, in terms of combined arms, we definitely see combined arms as having a really great place in a map like this, particularly with the World War II vehicles, which are much more simple means of control. It really suits well to this type of environment. But before we can really dive into the combined arms aspect of it, first we need to actually finish the entire assets pack. And once we get that done, then we can make a better determination of how combined arms will work in this type of a map. And once we know that, then we'll of course let you guys know. Next is about the bomber formations. And a lot of you guys noted the really great model of the B-17 that's going to be part of the assets pack, and a lot of questions about whether or not we'll be able to have realistic bomber formations, which of course is a very classic element of that. And yeah, we are actually working right now on a new bomber formation AI, which such bombers as the B-17s, the 24s, and the Ju-88s will be able to take advantage of. So in terms of expanding the Normandy map, probably not. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this map has already seen quite a bit of feature creep and expansion already, and there becomes a point we have to say enough is enough and move on to other map projects. In particular, again, we really need to get back to the Caucasus map so we can do essentially the Great Merge. And there's other maps that are waiting in the wings, like the Strait of Hormuz map, and we have other maps and plans as well. And we need to get started on those at some point, so we can only expand this map so much. So the next question is regarding new clouds, and the clouds themselves are a very different element in the map itself. It goes into the effects side of our teams, which is a different team than the map team. And the current plan right now is our first priority for our effects is to vastly improve the explosions. But when we do the explosions, there's going to be a lot of technology that we can essentially then use later for the clouds. So once we have the explosions improved, after that we'll really want to start updating the clouds. And that will probably be after 2.5, but we want to have the explosions for 2.5. So the next question is about turning off shadows, particularly to increase performance. And I know in the internal version right now, actually, when you have the settings options for clouds, you have, I believe it's options for default, which is the projected shadows, flat shadows, and then an off setting. And when you set it to off, you can actually turn off all the tree shadows and the building shadows, and basically any world object that is projecting a shadow, and that will help improve performance for those that need it. The next question was about creating dugouts and trenches, and the current engine right now is not a deformable terrain, so you really can't do anything like that at this point. Hopefully someday in the future, but not in the T4 map engine we're using right now. So the next question was about if structures like buildings and bridges can be destroyed, and yeah, they'll definitely all have damage and destruction models as well. So the next question was if you will need a map for running servers at release, and certainly anytime anyone is running the map, whether it's in single player, multiplayer, whoever is running the map has to have a key for that map. We simply can't provide free keys to everyone who wants to run a multiplayer server, and we also don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're having to choose favorites of what servers we give keys to and which ones we don't. So if you want to run a Normandy server, then you're going to have to buy the key to do that. The next question was asking about paved surface runways, and kind of as I mentioned earlier, all the runways are based on 1944, and we really don't have any plans of doing a fully modern day version of the map, minus the trains based on the date. So, but again, as I mentioned, except for maybe some very large aircraft, virtually all of the DCS World aircraft are perfectly capable of operating from the runways in the essentially the 1944 version, which has the steel planking. So the next question was asking if the map will come with aircraft, and the answer is no. All module maps are just the maps themselves, unless they're part of a bundle deal. If you want to fly the aircraft, then you'll have to buy those aircraft separately. So I'm over Point du Hoc now, and pretty much near the end of this flight. So now I'm going to go ahead and jump into some of the AI aircraft, and then we'll take a look at some of the ground units. But before I do that, a little brief announcement in that the first campaign for Normandy map is being built right now by Bunyap and I, and it's going to be a Spitfire campaign, which will focus on the Epsom campaign, which kind of took place just west of the Caen area, and we'll have more news on that later. Okay, let's take a look at some of the AI aircraft. So here I have some Spitfire Mark 9s parked on the runway, and you can get a better, closer look at the airfield detail, the grass, a couple of the new ground units, the truck and the Jeep, the barrels, just again, more how it looks at the ground level, which, as you can see, not just for, taxiing around and such, but I think for combined arms, it's going to be a pretty big advancement from what we have right now. And then we have the 109, and again, showing some of the detail on the runways and a couple of the new German ground units. And of course, the windstocks. Another angle. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the B-17 Flying Fortress. And this aircraft will certainly be one of the stars of the World War II assets pack, with a really high level of detail. And I think, as I mentioned earlier before, we also want to do a new AI formation logic, which allow it to fly in standard box formations, as well as correct bombing logic and such. But of course, the B-17 will be just one of the aircraft as part of the World War II assets pack. And we really want to focus on aircraft that were most common in Europe over northern France in the summer of 1944. And this includes aircraft like the C-47, the Typhoon, the Focke-Wulf 190 A6 and A8, the BF-109 G6, the A-20, the B-24, the B-25, the B-26. And of course, there's other aircraft that some have asked about, but they really weren't that common in this location at that time period. Okay, let's take a look at some of the ground units now, both some of the Commonwealth units as well as some of the Axis units. And like the asset pack aircraft, each of these vehicles have a very high level of detail, and quite a few of them. We're going to have quite a bit at the very start. We have a whole lot more coming down the road, and not just tanks, but also some of the personnel carriers, different types of AAA. Whether it's 88s or 20 millimeters on the Axis side, or the Beauforts on the Commonwealth side. And there's some ships we're going to be doing as well. So we really want to round out many different types of air, ground, and even a few of the naval assets that would be common at this location at this time period. Now, of course, the elephant in the room has been this controversy about the assets pack as a separate module. And this definitely will be sold as a module by itself, but also, again, will be offered as a bundle. In particular, you can buy the bundle as a pre-purchase for a cost actually less than even the Nevada map. And I think the key to remember here, too, is that DC World itself is free, and the only way that revenue is generated for DCS World is through the modules / DLC. And as we have more and more third parties developing content for DCS World, whether it be aircraft, ground unit packs, campaigns, maps, and so on, there needs to be a valid way for them to actually make it profitable and continue doing this, and not only for third parties but also for Eagle Dynamics as well. There has to be a revenue chain to fund developing the product. We've certainly looked at other ways to address this, such as even doing low detail objects that anyone can see in multiplayer. But it's not a really good idea, both from a business standpoint, particularly from a customer satisfaction standpoint of someone new coming into DCS World. So while we understand it's not a great option for some, we definitely believe it's the best option available, at least right now. And it will continue to be so for the foreseeable future. So let's get back to the Q&A portion. And the next question we had was whether or not the Normandy map will have German voiceover. And this really isn't a question of the map, but it's actually more of a question of the aircraft module, or even the campaign for that matter. Again, it's really not something that is part of the map itself. Now, the next question is a very popular one regarding the release of the Normandy map in Steam. Now, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about before of the unified version, what we're calling just like 2.5 for now. And with Steam, we can only actually have one depot and one open beta version of that depot at a time. And right now that version is 1.5 with a 1.5 open beta. So we really don't have an option to do a 2.0 version on Steam right now. Now, of course, once we move to the unified version, that version on Steam will be essentially 2.5 and the unified version in which we can have all the maps, all the campaigns at once. But until that happens, at least for now, the Normandy map and the Nevada map will solely be possible on the eShop version of DCS World. Now the next question touches on what I was referring to earlier regarding the assets pack, and the question was about having to continually purchase ground objects and AI units as they come out. And for the most part, no, we're really not planning on doing what's, I guess, termed micro transactions. The only time we'd be doing separate module packs like this would be projects that have devoted, a really large manpower investment of cost and time, that there needs to be, some kind of recoup on, the huge investments for projects like that. So again, I really don't foresee any situation where we're going to be charging per vehicle or per missile or, anything like that. And the last question on my list was regarding actually an effect of like black puffs for 88 flak and things of that sort. And it's certainly planned and will further be improved down the road as we improve the explosion effects. And with that, that wraps up the questions I had on my list for today. And I realize there's some questions I wasn't able to answer. Mainly because they're either very much subject to change, or I just simply don't know the answer at this point, and could probably be better answered by the development team, hopefully in a later live stream. So I hope you enjoyed this live stream, and I will see you next time. Thanks.